Oh, good afternoon, everyone. This is Bob Combs, or actually, I should say good evening over here. And I'm bringing you the Concern Forum. I hope everyone has had a wonderful day, and I hope everyone's been paying attention to what's been going on um, over the last couple of days. First thing I want to talk about the mayoral election. And I find it, for me, to be immensely amusing and exceedingly ironic. Okay, tell you what I mean. Who are the key players? Adams, Curtis Lewa, and Zohran Mamdami, right? Okay, Mr. Adams, the guy, he's presently the mayor, right? But unfortunately, he seems like he has a problem. As a matter of fact, he seems to have the same problem that his handler, Donald Trump, has. And that is that his people, his administration, his advisors, the deputy mayor, la la la, it's like every other week you see him being carted out of City Hall. Just for some type of corruption, right? Which is, really just like the Trump regime. Um, Rikers Island is still a hellhole, and quite frankly, and I say this, I mean, up until June 19th, I lived in the Bronx. And I'm a native of Harlem, born and raised in the city. And I will tell you, quite frankly, I don't see what the hell Adams has done for the lives of ravaged New Yorkers. He rolled over for the real estate lobby in New York and allowed them to jack up the price on rents. And it's bad. It's really bad. Um, the whole immigrant thing, it's been so badly mishandled. I suspect purposely. Um, it's just it's a circus of the ridiculous, quite frankly. And I really think that between asking Donald Trump to beg his Department of Justice, not to indict him for anything, I don't think New Yorkers need a mayor like that. Okay. Now, Curtis Lewa, on the other hand, I believe him to be a fairly honest dude, right? I enjoyed back in the day when him and his boys and girls used to go to the subway wearing their berets, basically doing citizen type uh, law, law control, what have you. But see, the thing is, we hopefully most of us have evolved since then. And like when we talk about back in the day, that's what we mean. Back in the day. I think we all realize now that the whole situation about crime, not just in New York, but in all American cities, there's a whole lot of social, economic stuff going down. And I don't think that Curtis really has a handle on that. And I don't think that his approaches would work. Maybe back in the day, but we're supposed to be a little more evolved, a little more wiser, right? And I don't think that Curtis is down with that. Another point, both for Adams and Curtis, we have the same president in the White House right now. A very insane, misogynistic, racist president, very twisted. He's very sick in both spirit and body, and he feels that the military, especially the National Guard, are his playthings. And he has taken a federal agency, ICE, and he has turned it into his own private Gestapo. And looking at both of these gentlemen, Adams number one because he's literally beholding to Donald Trump. Please don't let him get me, Donald. And Curtis, because unfortunately, Curtis, I don't think he understands. This is not the Republican Party of my mom and dad. I grew up as I'm very, I say it a lot. I grew up in a black Republican family, and my parents were Republican Party activists. They were also civil rights activists. Okay, that's not today's Republican Party. Now, Curtis's Republican Party thing, it might play well in Staten Island, right? But you folks know as well as I do, those of you who know anything about New York realize that Staten Island is kind of like an outlier in comparison with the rest of New York City. And I don't see either one of these guys standing up to ICE as they come to New York trying to harass and intimidate New Yorkers, especially around election time. I'm not just talking about 26. I'm talking about 28 as well. And I don't see either one of them guys having the moxie to stand up to Donald Trump and his ICE Gestapo. What did George Bush Sr. call people of ICE or people like ICE? Jackbooted thugs? Well, I don't see Adams or Curtis standing up to that. I just don't, right? Mamdami, I believe Mamdami will. And the fact that the press secretary for the president of the United States, what used to be the leader of the free world, uh, says that she would like to see Mamdami deported. Now, excuse me, Zohan is an American citizen. I understand that he came to America at the age of 7, but we have a lot of Americans who fit that same category. It's funny, man, because we have Americans. Ever hear something called World War II? Huh? Ever hear war brides? Do you know how many people walking around this country, okay, whose daddy was an American GI and whose mama was German or French or Brit or Japanese or Chinese? So what are we saying when we say things like, oh, well, a guy running for public office should be deported because we don't like his looks and we don't agree with his politics? What you're doing, I understand New York is one of the capitals of the world, but this is still a local New York City election. And when you throw terms around like deporting people, uh, I got a big problem with that. Okay. And let's talk about the biggie, right? The big enchilada that's trying to rain on Mondami's parade. Former governor of New York State, Mr. Cuomo. I almost tripped up and said Mario. See, sometimes, you get older, sometimes you go back in the day, right? But uh, like I said earlier, back in the day is back in the day. I think that Cuomo had his chance when he was governor. I'm not gonna, sit up here because I have other things to deal with tonight. But I, I think that he should have conducted himself in such a way so that he would have finished out his term as governor, and then, look for something else to do. Quite frankly, he didn't do that. He went to practicing law, and he practiced law for a war criminal. And I say war criminal because the international community has branded the prime minister of Israel as a war criminal. So this basically shows me, and should show any other reasonable person, that, hey, listen, I understand that lawyers have to attract, have to get clients, right? I understand that sometimes lawyers are appointed by the court. They have to defend odious people. But when you're a practicing attorney, and you have a good name recognition, you basically can pick and choose who you wish to represent for whatever reason. And I mean, he had the right to do that, right? If he wants to defend a war criminal, a person that has launched a genocide in the so-called Middle East, he has the right to do that. But I don't think that as New Yorkers, uh, that's the type of person that we should have as mayor. And then on top of that, it's my understanding that there has been communications between Mr. Cuomo and Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a very sick person in both body and spirit. He has no respect for the Constitution, and he's trying to use a military takeover to cover up his involvement in a child sex trafficking ring. Okay, I mean that that's my opinion based on everything that I know about the Epstein case and growing up in New York City and watching Donald Trump. Now, somebody might say, well, hey, were you in Trump's intimate circles? No, hell no. Hell no. But see, the thing about Donald Trump is that he made it his business to rub his bon vivant, his marriages, his basically, hey, the woman can't keep their hands off me, that whole lifestyle thing. See, he dragged the whole city through that bullshit. See? And now he's going to be like, oh, well, I was an innocent lamb. I- And this twisted man, right, felt moved to take the picture of the first black president and stick it in the basement somewhere. Hey, listen, I have a few disagreements with Barack Obama, but I definitely don't believe that he deserves to have this picture put in the basement. I mean, this is what we're dealing with here, folks, right? And both Adams and Cuomo have been in deep communications with this guy. So, what happens when ICE comes trying to kick in doors here in New York City? Who do you think is going to have the moxie to stand up to these people? I don't think Adams will. I don't think Curtis Lewa will. And unfortunately, because I am a registered Democrat and a member of GSA, but I'm a voting Democrat, and I'm sorry to say it, but I don't think that Cuomo has the moxie to stand up to Donald Trump. So you can't go behind the scenes and kibitz or whatever with the monster in the White House, and then present yourself as somebody worthy to be the mayor of New York City. All right, and the fact that the press secretary for the president of the United States says that Mamdami, the lead candidate, should be deported. And I would like to talk to those people out there in Staten Island because all those people are sons and grandsons and great grandsons and daughters of immigrants. But, I just, what in the hell has them so twisted? But that's another story, right? Just suffice it to say that we should have, we as New Yorkers really have to be careful about who we want to be our mayor. And I don't think that between Adams, Sliwa, and Cuomo, I don't, I don't see any of these amazing, not amazing, but I'm trying to coin a new word here. Amazing three have what it takes for 2025. Well, actually, 2026 to stand up to what we have going on now in the White House. I believe that Mondami does. See, and this business about oh well, he has a rent control. What? The guy's parents have a few bucks. So what? It's funny. It's real funny to me. Maybe I shouldn't say fun. Let's say ironic. Everything that working class Americans have now, we got because of a very ultra wealthy man who was a cripple and who fought for those things. Now, don't get me wrong. FDR was not perfect, far from perfect, right? You look at the placing of Japanese Americans in concentration camps, for example. His reluctance to really go in swinging hard against Southern Jim Crow practices. But in terms of, how presidents usually handle things, uh, FDR is on the top of the list. You wouldn't have Social Security, you wouldn't have workman's compensation, you wouldn't have unemployment insurance, things of that nature, but was it for FDR? And he was damn sure a wealthy person. So it's not so much wealth that is a disqualification to being someone who looks out for the working class. A lot of it is decency and common sense. FDR was a capitalist, make no mistake about it. He enjoyed being wealthy, but he had enough little, little decency and a lot of common sense to realize that you cannot maintain a democratic republic with millions of people out of work and starving. It just doesn't work. And unfortunately, uh, most of the Republican Party, they're still stuck with Herbert Hoover. No, Herbert Hoover didn't cause the depression, but he was of no help after the depression started, unfortunately. And which is it's a little bit different to what we have now. We have a president now who is actually trying to cause a depression. Now there are a lot of reasons. I mean, people have a lot of have come up with a lot of reasons why um, they're not that crazy. But in a situation like this, we're going to need a mayor with a backbone. Okay, Mamdami has proven his backbone, uh, and I will say this every damn video I make, and I am so fed up with those in the mainstream media. I don't know who the hell they're working for. I thought that the media's purpose in democracy was to inform and enlighten the American people. But I saw a debate with 5 or 6 candidates for mayor of New York City, and they were each asked a question about where will you go after you become elected mayor. And Mamdami was the only one that had the backbone to say, I ain't going nowhere. If I get lucky enough to be mayor of New York, I'm going to stay here. And I'm going to try and work on the problems that we have in New York. That took a lot of guts, a lot of decency as far as I'm concerned, and good common horse sense. And that's my personal opinion. The hell with the Democratic Socialist label. That's the reason. Because he would not go anywhere, Israel, any place else. That's why the folks in MAGA and in the Trump administration, keep giving this guy hell, right? I mean, you know, it's just so crazy. What the hell's happened to America? But let me deal with this Mandami thing. This is what certain segments, not just in New York but across the country, are pissed off about, right? Because this man says, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected mayor of this great city, I'm going to stay here and try to fix the problems of this city. And I will say this every video I do, I don't give a good damn, okay? Because it needs to be said, it needs to be drilled into a lot of Americans' thick heads, okay? A politician running for office in New York or California or Missouri, right? They need to be about the place that they are running for office for. So, yeah, if New York, I think the best thing that we can do is vote for Zohran Mamdami. It's just that simple. Okay, let's move on. Now, I'm just also wondering about elected Democrats. Um, what happened to backbone? I look out across America now, and this goes for Democrats and Republicans. I see the sons and daughters and the grandsons and granddaughters of men that landed on Normandy, landed at, Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, and for the most part, I see them as a bunch of slinking, cowardly curs, quite frankly. The Republicans, because they know it's evil, and they're hanging around like little lap dogs waiting for crumbs from Master Trump's table. And for Democrats, um, because of the fact that their programs are basically on the side of the angels, right? But every time they try to make a move, they're worried about what their damn donors think, right? Whether it be APAC or whether that be Big Pharma or whoever. Now, you have exceptions to that. Don't get me wrong. I mean, look at Governor Newsom out there. I most certainly intend to vote for him if he decides to run for president. And quite frankly, in terms of the Democratic Party, I don't think that you're going to have any you will not have a better candidate. You know why? Because he shows that he has guts, right? And or as we say in the street, he has, he's shown he has the balls. End of story. But as far as a lot of them, I saw a very sickening sight. My congressman from my district in the Bronx, I have been so enlightened over the last 3 weeks about this guy. Taking money from AIPAC and condoning uh, genocide, essentially, and forced removal of human beings. And see, when people talk about, oh, well, the Democrats are just, they're so slimy. And this is what they're talking about. It hurts me. I'm a registered Democrat. I vote Democratic. But the Democrats are really going to have to start showing people that they have balls. First thing they need to do, they need to clean out that DNC in DC, quite frankly, um, because they are so tied to donors. We have a lot of, we have some serious problems in how we do elections in this country. Same thing with the NAACP. I'm a member of the NAACP. Have you heard? I mean, have you heard from these guys lately? We have troops marching in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. And we are being threatened with troops coming to Chicago, Baltimore. And I'm just waiting to see some Democratic senators and, representatives and governors. I mean, I appreciate and I respect what the governor of Maryland and the governor of Illinois have said. I'm waiting on Ms. Hochul in New York. Because see, we're not helpless. There are things that blue state governors can do. Number one, you have to realize something, and that is that with all the crap about MAGA and red states, number one, the people in the red states, they're dying, right? Especially when you're talking about farm country, they're dying. Why? Well, if you have anything to do with agriculture, you are really screwed. And see, this gets to a bigger psychological problem that we have in America. And I know that no one wants to talk about it because it's not a nice subject. But gender bias, sexism, racism, that's all 2024 was about, right? Donald did not win no freaking landslide, okay? But the fact that he was able to edge his way into a victory, I think that says a whole lot. We're not playing, we're not just playing politics anymore. We're not, we're dealing with the survival of our republic. And that's something I don't think a lot of Americans understand. And you have to remember the so-called conservatives, the Republicans, they have spent the last 15, 20 years working overtime to essentially dumb down the average American. And see, that's one of the sad things because you make college unaffordable and then you expect people to really be able to participate in the democracy, uh, you know, with issues they don't understand, guided by their bias. And you have these candidates that, on the Republican side, all they do is appeal to people's, biases, quite frankly. Well, you want that man who had an operation, you want him going to the bathroom with your daughter? All this kind of crazy shit, quite frankly. I mean, what's the percentage of trans people in the United States? Is it even 1%? Do you think that giving up your democracy and your freedom of speech, uh, do you think having the right to discriminate against trans people is worth giving up your democracy? And of course, Democrats are accused of, oh, well, they just worry, they want to fight for the rights of trans people. Well, that's bullshit because Democrats are and do fight for the rights of everyone. That's why it's called democracy. That's why it's called America. But see, the right wing takes that. Remember this whole thing about, oh, well, Democrats are child rapists, and they got a pizza joint in D.C. where they sexually abuse children and murder them and drink their blood. And you actually had some damn fool going to that pizza parlor with a weapon trying to kill Hillary Clinton. You know, see, this is the mentality that Republicans have unleashed in America, especially the so-called heartland. And this is what makes this period in America's history so dangerous. Give you another example. That uh, insurrection that Trump led, right? A young woman was killed trying to break one of the doors in the Capitol. Her goal being to look for Nancy Pelosi and kill her and kill Capitol Hill police officers. She got shot, right? She was a sad case because apparently she had a grievance. And from what I understand, it was a very valid grievance, okay? But instead of banging on the door to her representative, she decided to join with Trump and tear down our democracy. And now the Trump administration, I believe they're in the process of trying to give her a hero's military funeral. One, they don't do that for the boys and girls who die in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. Yeah, we have people dying in Syria now too. But they don't do that for any of them. Trump don't give a damn about military people. He has stolen from us two charities in New York. He stole from handicapped children and he stole from disabled veterans. Two charities, right? He and his family cannot have a charity in New York State. And now this person, right, he's going, yeah, well, she deserves it. I'm saying, Ashley Babbitt, we're going to give her a military funeral. What? I feel funny talking about it because the girl was a vet and I'm a disabled vet. And I will always respect the vet, okay? Even if they're on the far right wing, because we owe veterans in this country, we owe veterans in America. We most certainly do, right? Do veterans have more rights than other people? No, they should not have more rights than other people. But it should be recognized that as a veteran, I say you're a super American because you didn't put your money where your mouth was, you put your life, okay? What is it? Put your money where your mouth is? Well, we put our lives where our mouth is, right? And I also want to mention, and to all these guys in the National Guard, guys and gals in the National Guard, Trump don't give a damn about you. Now, those of you out there who, pay attention to the news and what have you, you already know this. Okay, he thinks that we're suckers, right? He thinks that people like you and me who wind up injured from our service in the military are suckers. Okay, he has said that He had a few generals. Okay, I would take the word of a four-star Marine general over Donald Trump any day of the week. Okay, but words out of his own mouth, right? Like John McCain, he wasn't a hero. Okay, now, and this what really bugs me about a segment of the American people, right? Who talk about patriotism and honor. You know, this son of a bitch is a five-time draft dodger, right? And he has the nerve to talk about who is and who ain't a hero. Now, he is the commander in chief, okay? However, you also took an oath. And those of you, especially you guys who have been regular military before going in the National Guard, you know what I'm talking about. And you colonels and generals in the military and admirals, you know what the hell I'm talking about. Okay? That oath that we took to defend the Constitution, we take no oath of loyalty to any person in the White House. We take an oath to defend the Constitution. And I think that you need to keep that in mind in these troubled days ahead. Because believe me, brothers and sisters in the military, it's going to get worse. It's going to get a lot worse. And you know, that's the funny thing. People over here ask me, why is this man destroying his own voters? Why is he destroying his own supporters? Supporters being, especially, I'm just being real here, especially white, working class, right? And the segment of Latino voters that voted for his election, right? These are the people who are being, right now, they're being destroyed the most. I mean, yeah, you got a few, I call them Sambo blacks that voted for him. But no, the vast majority of black people either didn't vote or they voted for Kamala, right? And we're in the same boat. Black, white, Latino, Asian, indigenous person, we're all in the same boat. But see, indigenous people, black Americans, when have we not been catching hell in this country? Okay, I mean, the problem that we have now is with white American working class people. And I remember Baba Dick Gregory when I was a student at City College back when at 74. Uh, he made that prediction. He knew what he was talking about because he said that there were powerful corporate economic interests that were building at that time, shaping up and building to essentially turn white working class people into peasants. See, and that is what has come true. And if you think that I'm being hyperbolic, talk to the people out there in farm country, in the heartland, right? Who are losing their farms. They go to the damn farms. You voted for a guy that told you he was going to get rid of your labor. So if your thing is agriculture, and see, that's why I say what we have to look at is why? What is this sickness that makes Americans vote against their own interests? Now, I tell you, man, I've been dealing, this whole idea that being a black kid out of the projects in New York, and we see white people as some kind of alien species, that's bullshit, right? New York was Jewish, Irish, and Italian before it became predominantly black. And you know what? A lot of them same people continue to live there, especially in the west side of Harlem. I know one of them, a new one of them, George Carlin. And my mom knew him better than I did, and because she was friends with his mom, right? My mom was a school crossing guard, 123rd Street, National Avenue, right? Uh, Colin and me was in the same Catholic grammar school system. He went to Corpus Christi. I went to St. Thomas the Apostle. You know, and what do you call 'em, Irish holdouts, whatever, right? So white folks are not alien. But so the thing that people need to understand is that you have a strong, how should I say, a racial component to American politics. You know, white people are not innately evil. I never believed that bullshit, right? I lived amongst them. I served with them in the military. I mean, digging ditches together, digging foxholes, being assigned on ships. Yeah, a lot of racism, but also a lot of camaraderie. And my God, make America great again? Listen, if we could just focus, if working class people could just focus on what the real problems are and who the real enemies are to our progress, I think that the United States could be an amazing country. And we have this chance, we have that chance in 28, all right? We might get a peek through the curtain in 26, but we have the chance in 28. Right? Look at the people who run the White House and who have the majority in Congress. At them. Look at them. They don't give a damn about you. Don't you understand that? The question is, what what is their ultimate goal in destroying Americans, working class Americans? How in the hell can you purport to represent people in your district? We're going to take away your health care. Okay, that means a lot of people are going to die, right? Because that's what usually happens to human beings, especially after they get to be a certain age or have certain disabilities or calamities come into their lives. If you don't get the health care, you're going to die, right? If you are beyond a certain age and you, for whatever reason, age, disease, or incapacitated, and you need to be taken care of by professionals, i.e., in the nursing home, well, because of the bill that they passed, Mima, as they say out in the country, Mima is going to either be out on the street or she's going to wind up in your working class home on your working class couch, right? You go into the, what is it, National Observatory, right? Weather stations or what have you. Why in the hell would you do things to cut the services of people that warn communities, mostly working class, low income white communities, that, hey, there's a hurricane coming. Hey, there's a tornado coming. As we saw what happened in Texas several weeks ago, right? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Why would you cut people whose sole job is to try and find a cure for cancer? One of the greatest health nemesis that we have on the planet. Why would you do those kind of things? I don't get that. I really don't. Maybe someone could explain that to me. Why would you do everything you can to try and end Social Security? Something that's been going on for almost 100 years now. Why would you do that? Because most people, most working class people, are not into a whole lot of stocks and bonds. And they need to know that when they're finally at the point where it's just almost impossible for them to work, that they're not going to wind up in the street or in some, in some alley somewhere or in some freaking basement dying alone and in poverty. Why would you do that? Right? Why would you have one of your right wing mouthpieces with Megan Kelly, one of them clowns, right? Talking about at the scene where a guy dressed in black with a mask on his face decides to shoot into a Roman Catholic church and school. I remember how that was when I was a kid, right? St. Thomas Brown had the same type of deal, right? School begins, first everybody goes to church, goes to mass, right? Supposed to be, good start for the school year. And you got some idiot shooting into the church, killing two kids and wounding a bunch of people. And all progressives and Democrats were saying was, please stop the bullshit about, hope and prayer. We give our prayers, and the right wing tries to say, oh, well, that's because Democrats don't believe in prayer. Ain't got a damn thing to do with that. I don't expect, nor do I want my representative in Congress or my senator or my state assembly person. I don't need them to worry about hope and prayer. I did not vote for them for that. I can pray on my own. Right? I'm a human being. And if I feel that prayer is what's called for in a situation like that, which obviously to me it is, I mean, that's fine. But I expect the people who get paid our government's money, right, who we vote for, to do something. And see, this is the thing that really shows me that, generally speaking, there's exceptions to everything, but generally speaking, Republicans and conservatives are full of shit because they're taking that tragedy and instead of saying, getting together and say, hey, look, yo, man, look, we gotta figure out a way to stop this shit from happening again. They're not doing that. They're saying, yeah, look, we gonna throw out some hope and prayer. Yo, man, you can empathize with the family, right? We're all human beings here. I can empathize, sympathize with the families. But Mr. Congressman, Mr. Senator, Mr. State Assembly person, Mr. or Miss City Council person, that's not your job, baby. We didn't elect you to pray, okay? We elected you to do shit for us, man, to take action. And see, this is the thing that really burns me up about these right wing clowns, right? Because they talk about patriotism in America and all that other good stuff. When an American sees something that is so wrong, right? They say, "Yo, we got to fix this because this is wrong." It's just that simple, right? We're not going to sit around and just pray about it. Pray on your own damn time. In the meantime, work to save the kids. Right? I shouldn't be in third period in the fourth grade and worry about getting my head blown off. It's just that simple. Over here, people ask me, oh, I was thinking about going to America just to visit and, do a tourist thing. I'm not going over there. They call us the United States of Columbine, for God's sake. We are the only, as far as I know, we are the only country that we have this regular mass shooting, right? And We have to find a reason for it. And Trey Gowdy says something which surprises me because I usually don't pay attention to anything that comes off of Fox. That's from trial and error, okay? And Trey Gowdy being a conservative and everything, but he said something that's real. He said, yo, this is a problem. And unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, this is going, it's a young white male doing this. And we need to find out what the hell is going on. And he gets all kind of condemnations from those MAGA people and what have you. Why? It's true, it's real. Is that why the right wing does not want history taught in American schools? Because they are so afraid of what's real? People, I'm going to tell you something. We got problems in this country, right? We want to give decorated military funerals to insurrectionists, right? Like I was talking about earlier, what was her name? Ashley Babbitt? Ashley Babbitt deserves a military funeral. She's a veteran. She deserved that. But this was back in 2020. I'm sorry, 2021. You try, and the fact that the Trump administration is the one pushing for it, it's bullshit. No disrespect to Ashley. As I said earlier, she had legitimate grievances. But unfortunately, she listened to the siren sound of this child, in my opinion, this sex trafficking asshole that somehow got to be president a second time. And we have to find out what it is about Americans that make them go for a guy like this. And then you have these so-called Christian nationalists. Listen, Christian nationalists are one of the reasons why church attendance, the idea of being a Christian, it's gone down so low in America because people equivocate Christian nationalists with Christianity in America. And a lot of people, especially people below 50, are saying, hey, I don't know nothing to do with that bullshit. Because it's just something that to cover up or a nice jacket to put over their own bigotry, right? And their own poisonous hearts. That's not what Christianity is supposed to be about. Now, I always tell people, I'm a former Catholic, former altar boy. But certain things in the Bible, in the Christian Bible, they've always touched my heart. And if you are a real Christian, as far as I'm concerned, then you would know this passage out of the Bible, right? You remember when God gave Joseph that dream about the who was it, Herod was, going to kill all the babies, right? Now I'm not going to go into whether or not that's folklore or whether that really happened, but I think it's a very good moral lesson. You know, take the what is it about? To be what God said was the angel said, "Wake up, take your wife and child, and flee to Egypt." Right? Which, by the way, also says a lot about Christianity's origins. By the way, because hey, this guy was like he was born. Christ was born a hop, skip, not even a hop, skip, and jump, but just a hop, skip from the Egyptian border. Okay, so that kind of tells you how much the world of Africa and Southwest Asia are connected, right? But besides that, what did he say? He said, take the kid, take your wife, take your kid, and get the hell to Egypt, right? What were they? The first illegal. So the Holy Family is a case of the first illegal immigrants, right? See, you don't have real Christianity in America, okay? Because you cannot be a Christian without compassion and also a little common sense, by the way. But you have a faith that teaches you to be kind to the stranger, right? And under the Trump regime, we do just the exact opposite. And I don't really, I'm not giving any applause for how Biden or Obama handled immigration either, by the way. But at least they didn't come across as being manic depressive about this situation. Um, Trump has appointed this guy. To me, he looks like a bully out of a bar, Holman, right? He's just dying to show how tough he is. If I were him, I would think twice about going into Brooklyn, okay, or certain parts of Harlem. I'm for real about that because this is something else that Democrats in Congress and the Senate they need to get up off their ass because the FBI and ICE have lowered their standards. You know, you don't need to have a college degree to be in the FBI. Even under Hoover, you supposed to have a college degree. But now it's not necessary. So you can be any tough punk, right? Any skinhead, tattoo wearing punk, right? With the right kind of tattoos or the wrong kind of tattoos, and be a member of the FBI or ICE. Uh, Congress has the power to oversee the standards of both ICE and the FBI, and they need to do it, period. And I have run over the time that I've allotted myself, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it short now. We'll be back, but in the meantime, you take care of each other. And this is Bob Gomes of the Concerned Forum. If you like what I had to say, give me a like. And even if you don't, at least hear me out. Listen, I will see you next time. Bless you and take care of each other. Peace.